You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks and a very special episode as I sit down with actor John Thomson. You'll know John as part of the Fast Show cast. He's also known for his roles in Cold Feet and more recently in The Gentleman. I appeared on a Radio 4 quiz show 8 years ago with John. We've never managed to sit down and have that chat we promised that we would, but here we are, we finally did. So here's myself and John Thomson talking all about his love of Star Wars and much more on a very special episode of Making Tracks. So John, when did you first see Star Wars and what was it that grabbed you about it as a kid?
Okay, so in 1977 I went to a children's birthday party that was a cinema trip to see King Kong with Jessica Lange, the remake. And when I saw that at the Odeon in Preston, which is near where I grew up, they trailed Star Wars. And Mum said, because I'm a big horror sci-fi fan, and so my mum was excited for me that I was seeing a remake of King Kong. Yeah. And I came home and Mum went, oh, what was it like? Was it good? And I went, forget King Kong. I went, I want to see the film with the giant space monkey and the gold robot. That's what I said. So I was 8, because I just remember Leah giving him a kiss and swinging across and just absolutely, what is this? I have never, ever seen anything like it. And do you know what's quite interesting that I was thinking about in the car today, because I was having a bit of a listen to one of your previous episodes. What I love about is the Death Star's newness is how polished everything, how shiny, and new it is. There's no battle fatigue. Because sci-fi, before that, I mean, the 70s was such a magical period for sci-fi. I remember saying, God, it looks so clean. It was just like nothing else that I'd ever seen, really. I mean, I did enjoy King Kong, don't get me wrong, but I was very, very excited by that trailer, especially on the big screen. And it wasn't long before I saw it, and I just loved it. And my brother did too. My brother's 3 years younger than me. We weren't particularly close until Star Wars came along. We used to have a thing like, in football, I mean, I hate football, but, when they have that bag of balls and they go, Chelsea, and it's the fixing the games, and they put them in like a bingo thing. We used to put Star Wars figures in a drawstring bag, pull them out and go, who's that? And I'd go, is that Ree-Yees? And he'd go, yes! We knew them all. We knew all the really obscure ones. Ben had a Millennium Falcon, and Ben, my brother Ben, who works for the BBC, right. Ben's more knowledgeable than I am. He's big into Lego as well. Ben's knowledge is quite something, really. So you contacted me on the back of the Star Wars Mastermind experience. Well, 10 years previously, I had done Celebrity Mastermind, and my chosen specialised subject was Bond villains, and I got 14 and no passes. Ted Robbins, who's an old friend, was the warm-up man. Now, the interesting thing about Celebrity Mastermind is there is no way of seeing the scores of each individual person. So there's no tally. So a lot of game shows, you'll have like a digital readout in front of the contestant. Yeah. But on this, it's just the chair and the questions, And it's supposed to be, with a and a single spot. It's supposed to be an interrogation, and it is very, very intimidating. And Stuart Lee was on with me, who's an old friend and comedian, friend from the circuit. Stuart is Cambridge, I believe, or Oxford educated. So it's always like when there's one of them on, I'm always like, well, I didn't go there, but I'm bright, so watch out. And Ted Robbins memoed to me, he went, and I went, Stuart started to flounder a bit on his general knowledge. And he went, and the scores are John Thomson, 26, but just pipped at the post there. The winner, Stuart Lee, with 27. And I went, no. And I think the reason why it devastated me so badly is, one, I've won most British game shows. I've won them all. The only exception is 15-1. I came second to Rufus Hound, which I don't mind, really. But I've won everything else. We got this record on the chase. We got 250,000 on that. So, I pride myself in my trivia with the exception of sport. So I'm not very, very good at sport. So cinema is my sport. I'm not interested in any sport of any kind whatsoever. And I think you'll find a lot of people that like geeky, nerdy things like Star Wars don't really. I think we're escapists. Someone said, why don't you like sport? I said, well, it's one less disappointment in life. And I think that's a fair comment. We're not the greatest country in the world at sport either. I mean, it's coming home. It's coming home. I mean, that was 1966. It's got lost in the post, hasn't it?
When you're in that scenario, then you've done some quizzes, as you say. I've done a couple. I was on Weakest Link. I went halfway through. I can't remember when we did Gabby's Talking Pictures. Did we win or did we lose? I can't remember. The first episode. I think we lost, didn't we?
Can't remember.
I should know that. That's terrible. But I did a couple of things on Sky and I won them, so it's great. But I really got nervous when I did Weakest Link because Anne Robinson's staring up at you with those.
She's terrifying. I've done Dictionary Corner with Anne, and I thought she would have a different persona for Countdown, but it's still this kind of malevolent force, that's kind of hypercritical of you. Anyway, she was having a go at me because I like 50s shirts. And I used to check, because what it is, I'm going to break the magic of TV here. You shoot 5 episodes in one day, so it's a 5-shirt job. So you shoot them back to back, and they go out Monday to Friday. Anyway, there's a tailor called Lansky Brothers, that Elvis used to use, and they do these really great 50s shirts, and I've got quite a selection of them. And I'd take quite a few of those in. And she went, what blouse are you wearing today, Mr. Thomson? And I was like, give it up, will you? Anyway, on the last day, she has this ridiculous jewellery. And I just thought, I'm not taking it anymore. I'm not going to take it on the chin. And I said to her, Anne, can I ask you a question before I go? And she went, yes. I went, how much does Mr. T charge you to rent his jewellery? Anyway, the girls on the show roared. She didn't get the joke.
Oh,
but
no.
It was a big win for me, that. But Weakest Link is intimidating. But I did it with Ranganathan.
Ramesh.
I did it with Ramesh Ranganathan, and he was great. And I won it. I won the Christmas special, which was
nice.
Great. Yeah, that was not last year before. And it was great because I was in Panto and I had to do a quiz in the Panto. And they went, you're good at quizzes, aren't you, Abanaza? And I went, yes, if you watched The Weakest Link last night, I won it. I had lived it on the day after because it went out when I was in the middle of the Panto.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's interesting because I chose original trilogy because it kind of stops there for me.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was, because it went so quiet until the next 3 came along, there was that magical piece of marketing of little Anakin Skywalker with the Darth Vader shadow being cast. I saw that and I bought that poster. And then what I got, I think it was really just an extended video game, really. It was kind of like pod racing. I just thought, ooh, this has been premeditated for a crossover.
Didn't work for you?
Not really. No, I didn't like it. I didn't like it after that, really, until Force Awakens.
Because obviously you're a comedian and an actor and you've been in all sorts of stuff. Has the opportunity to be in these things ever come across your threshold, or do you want to maintain the illusion, the magic of it? Has it ever been an opportunity?
I would love to be in a Star Wars, but it's never come along. And I know who casts it, Nina Gold. And I said to my agent, please, there's a few ticks that need to be ticked before I shuffle off my mortal coil. And one is Bond, one is Star Wars, definitely. Marvel, I'm not too bothered now. I read a really interesting article about Westerns in the 50s and 60s being absolutely everywhere. TV, cinema, it was just Westerns. And they said what happens is people just got burnt out by it. And I think the same started to happen with Marvel, really. But the thing with Star Wars, when Disney came along, I really feel that it was oversaturated until I personally feel the saving grace was Mandalorian, particularly the first series. I just thought, wow, this is just magic.
You make a good point about oversaturation because in what we do, it's a constant topic. Is there too much of this? There's a new comic, is a new book, there's a new everything all the time. Just to briefly flick to some of the stuff you've done before, you didn't do that many episodes of The Fast Show, so it's well regarded because you didn't go to the well too many times and it's maintained its magic. Do you think there's something in that?
I do. For example, cast your mind back. This is people of a certain age, I'm 55 now. At Christmas, we would always buy the Radio Times and the TV Times, and I would go straight to the films because those films only had a cinematic release once, say. And you'd be so excited because you'd missed it. And you'd go, my God. And you'd earmark, you'd draw around it, put a circle around it and go, well, must be in to watch pre-VHS. I've got to be in to watch this. So the pure excitement of that has gone, really. Yeah. Everything's just at the flick of a switch. Cinema to a point, but you do await the next great thing. It's funny, though, because I feel CGI and technology in some ways have improved things, But in other ways, they've taken some magic away. I mean, I was a Doctor Who fan when I was a kid. I mean, how many disused quarries are left that they haven't filmed in
That's
the
true.
filter on the lens, you know? But it was just something about that kind of basicness of it I kind of loved. And it wasn't because I was young. An example is like practical effects can be so good. There was a film recently in the Predator installment called Prey, and it was set in the Native American landscape of the West, you know, the Wild West. And that was practical effects. And that film was just knockout, really.
It's a great point. There's a brilliant documentary on Disney Plus called Light and Magic. When you go back and watch, I've got my ILM t-shirt on there. You know, you go back and look at how they made it back in the day, and it is spit and sawdust and ingenuity and wired piano string and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it does it changed things so much when it's pixels and there's no boundaries and you can make anything. When they make Jaws, the shark doesn't work half the time. When they make Alien, it looks crap in the light. It looks better in the, you know, there's all these inhibitions that actually make it better in a way.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I heard you talking about Millennium Falcon and them actually building one in full scale and then not using it for another film. If I go through the kind of order of things, I always revisit the first 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I had a comic, very basic paperback size one of Empire.
Yes.
And Yoda was purple in it. I remember. There's something about that comic. I don't know who the publisher was, but
it's Marvel. Yeah.
Was it Marvel? I used to read it over and over again. Something about the bit with where Luke goes into the swamp to confront his fears. It was always give me a kind of, a bit of an edge to it. The big problem though for real fans of those films was it was all the remasters. There was so many versions if I go through my old DVD collection, you'll still have an HMV sticker on it for the price. And they weren't cheap. No, 25 quid. There's a lot of money. So I've got various versions, THX and special edition
But they know how to reel you in, don't they? Because they've got you on a hook of nostalgia. You're going to warmly receive anything new that comes along from those original films. And I think with stuff like, for example, Andor, obviously Rogue One is right at the back door of the original film, and then Andor's leading you up to that, so they've caught that nice sort of 70s feel, the 70s aesthetic. It's such a clever show. They've got you on a hook there.
I started watching Andor, but my younger daughter was watching it, and she just saw the first 5 minutes. She went boring, and I went, do you know what, for you, so I need to go and revisit that.
You do. But
the super fans, they're a bit of any kind of super geek, the studios must be just kind of, oh my God. I mean, they're quite powerful, aren't they? They get things changed because you go, that is not law. That is not LORE law. You need to have a word with yourself and sort out your timelines. Some of the other spin-offs on Disney, we had, I say Boba, but I'm pulled up sometimes for Boba. And it doesn't matter. I mean, The Mandalorian, I could not get enough of it. I was literally... And do you know what I love as well? Serialization of streamed service is that thing where you can't binge it and you got to wait. I love that. Yeah. I'm too old, sadly to say, for Saturday morning pictures. I mean, they might have done it in other towns, but where I was, you know, they're those serializations like Flash Gordon. Yeah. They're kind of all the big people cut their teeth on, like Lucas and Spielberg. Totally. Flash Gordon was a huge influence on Star Wars. They did that, and they would wait. Will he survive? Will he be all right? And the cliffhangers. I didn't have that, so I always think it's great when you have to wait a week to watch the next. I like that. It's good discipline for the soul, I feel.
It is, and things, you go back to what you said earlier, things are definitely too disposable. For podcast listeners, I'm holding up my phone. You can watch everything that Star Wars has ever been on that thing. But like you say, when you're waiting 3 years for the next film, you were there. You waited, we didn't wait 3 years for Empire because Star Wars didn't come out till 78. But, you're waiting for Empire. Then you had that 3-year gap to Jedi. And, you're a couple of years older than me. So at our sort of age as kids, that 3 years might as well have been a decade. Yeah.
So long. Yeah. It's so long.
The anticipation, it's all part of the flavour of Star Wars, isn't it?
Of course it is. It's funny when you meet people who've never seen it, Jimmy Nesbitt, I've never seen Star Wars. I went, what? No, I've never seen it. I went, how come? I was really shocked, And he went, I don't like science fiction. And I went, it's not, though. He said, I don't like science fiction. I went, it's not science fiction. Do you know, I don't know what he thinks science fiction is like. Probably Isaac Asimov, maybe. But
it's space fantasy, isn't it?
Space fantasy. No, it's brought me a lot of joy, Star Wars, and continues to.
For everything in one location, Daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds. Bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
There's one thing that stood out for me is Darth Vader is a supervillain, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
You never really see in any of the Star Wars films real evil, except maybe when he was Anakin and he wipes out the Sand.
Yeah.
But I do remember on Blue Peter, they said, well, why is he like that? Darth Vader, why is he like that? And someone said, well, he fell into a volcano. And that stayed with me, you know. I could not believe that what made him, you know, have to wear the breathing equipment and why is he partly automated? And it was on Blue Peter. It's one of those things where you tell people and they go, no, it wasn't. And I go, honestly, do you remember it? Do you remember?
I do remember it. But another thing we talk about on the pod a lot is that if you read the original novel, so the prelude was summarizing the Clone Wars. So we read about the Clone Wars before we ever met Luke, Leia, Han, any of those characters. And it is, as you just said, it's a summarization of that. I think it's fleshed out more in the Jedi novel as well.
Right,
but that whole thing about falling into a volcano.
Yeah, so I tried to rewatch Phantom Menace and I just couldn't watch it. Is it the way with Qui-Gon Jinn thing and those strange kind of...
The Nemoidians, yeah.
And the mouths don't quite, you know, sync to the... I just thought, no. Force Awakens is great, but it's a remake of Star Wars. Really.
Basically, yeah.
It is, but it is great. I really loved it. And I saw it at the cinema. So I'm thinking of spin-off Solo I found it
Solo's great fun.
I thought it was good, but it's very, when I say dark, I mean lit.
Literally,
Very, sometimes, I don't know whether because it's the I don't know. You can't adjust the brightness in the cinema, can you?
No.
Very, very dark. Not dark like Empire's dark, innit? It's a dark film. But I enjoyed that. I'm trying to think of some of the others.
Rogue One.
Everybody dies.
Yeah.
Have to. Quite like that, though. Quite like that.
It's quite ballsy, isn't it? For a Disney film, it's the second one out the gate.
Yeah, I didn't mind it. It's always great to see characters re-emerge, you know, the classics.
So when Obi-Wan came on a couple of years ago, Ewan McGregor's back in the role. I mean, you weren't enamoured with the prequels, but it's Ewan McGregor, so he's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Did that catch your interest?
Of course. I watched it all, but I didn't rate it. I didn't rate it like Mandalorian. It seemed very rushed. And that's why I say Darth Vader, there was a bit where he's walking through a settlement, say, a village.
Yeah.
And he just points at some young guy and he breaks his neck and kills him. And I just thought, I've never seen Darth Vader ever do that. I've seen him make someone float up, you know, and choke and then release Vader. All that. I've seen him start it and stop it. But when I saw that, I went, what? So far, that's so brutal. He's just broken someone's neck with the Force. And it really didn't add up to me, you know. There's a lot of flying around. And I know the super fans, Mandalorian went, it all went to hell in a handcart. I love that giant black Wookiee.
Casantan, yeah.
Look, that is fantastic. But yeah, Boba Fett, and I again enjoyed. I did enjoy them, but I found him and his sidekick, who begged to be brought back to life. Apparently,
that's right.
And they said, "All right, then, that's some power." That I just found their performances a little stilted. It was all one note, really. A lot of this kind of acting going on. All right, we'll do that for you. You know, it's all right. He got out the Sarlacc pit well. It can be done. It's not just Houdini. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it all. I started watching what was the latest? Ashoka, is it?
Ahsoka, yeah.
I didn't mind that. I didn't finish it, though. The thing is, though, you've got to remember, this is escapism.
Yes.
People get a bit too serious about their individual escapes, don't they?
Very true.
Yeah, it's taken literally. And it's like, well, can't you just look at it objectively and be entertained?
We find this on the site. We got all the social media and stuff that goes along with Fantha Tracks, and we have to manage it because we've got the new show coming in called The Acolyte, which is set 100 years before Phantom Menace, and it looks fantastic and it looks great. And we've seen very little of it. You mentioned the Nemoidians, the characters from the Phantom Menace. You see a couple of those in the teaser for it, so it looks great. But already it's been absolutely flamed for no reason. Nobody's seen anything of it.
No one knows anything.
Can be quite a negative fandom.
It can, really. Timelines are an issue, obviously, but and how old people are, and like you said to me, in all my revision, the problem with me is I'm always pipped at the post on Mastermind by someone from Oxbridge. Kills me. I didn't go to Oxbridge, but I've got a very high IQ. Because I don't take part in competitive sports, people say you are competitive. And I went, yes, on an intellectual level, very much. But I don't go lock myself away or I just have to deal with it, But Ivo Graham, who was on with me, I didn't find out the other contestants on Celebrity Mastermind until I arrived in Belfast. There's Mark Pugach, who is a sportsman. I thought, well, he'll be good because he'll know his field very well.
Yeah.
Don't know about his general. There was me, the lovely girl who's a potato chef, Poppy.
Yeah.
She can do anything with a potato, and she was lovely. And then Ivo Graham. Then I read Eton, Oxford, speaks fluent Russian, and I went, I'm f***ed. First time I've sworn. Game over. I knew. I just knew. And we were just chatting in the green room at one point. Went, do you mind? Can we just keep the chat to a minimum, please? And I just thought, oh, right, okay. Because I said, I'm here to win. I did say to him. And he was getting a bit like, because of what happened the previous time. But now I'm kind of over it. Because the last time Ted Robbins said, you've won, and I didn't win, that was an added wound.
Yes.
But now I'm just kind of running out of things to do. It's funny, because they do change the rules depending on who it is. And I said, do you know what you want to do if you chose a specialised subject? I went, yeah, Highlander, the original film with Christophe Lambert, because I've watched it so many times. I know it backwards. Yeah. And they went, can't do an individual film. And I went, what? They went, you can't just do one film. And I went, really? And they went, all right, I'll do Indiana Jones. And they went, can I do it without doing Crystal Skull? And went, no. They said no. Destiny just come out, and they didn't have to do that. I mean, if I ever come back, that might be one, Indiana Jones with Crystal Skull.
A good one.
You see, when I did Bond villains, I shot myself in the foot because at the time it's 22 films, and that is just unbelievable. Got one wrong because I didn't know what Scaramanga's previous employer was. I said Spectre, and it was actually KGB.
Oh, okay.
So for those that are listening, so you know. But I mean, Bond's been my number one fandom. As I've said to John Rain, Smirsh Pod, John who does Smirsh Pod, he does.
No.
I said to John, really? I said, my leisure interests is just like walking in Forbidden Planet. But when I go in Forbidden Planet, I'm the only person there with normal coloured hair and no piercings. He said, yes, you are the freak.
Hi, this is Guy Henry, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Enjoy.
I met Charlie Higson about 17 years ago. Didn't he write some young James Bond books?
He did. He wrote loads, and he's now writing adult Bond films. So I've just been on tour with Charlie. I just done the Fast Show live. So we did 16 shows, but there's a toe in the water, and it's sold out. So we will come back. There's talk of coming back and doing it live again, autumn 25, because Paul Whitehouse is doing
Only Fools, isn't he?
Only Fools on tour, which he co-wrote with John Sullivan's brother. So Paul's got his work cut out. He's got to get a fishing in with Bob, so he's got to get that in. I was talking to Charlie about the Bond, and he's written On His Majesty's Secret Service, and that's an adult Bond book. That's his latest. He's quite shy, Charlie, really, but that's something we do bond on, is 007. He's actually commissioned by the Fleming estate. So, you have to get the nod. You can't just randomly write one and publish. No. They have to say it's all above board. And he gets private screenings with the Fleming relatives and first viewings of the film.
Have you, in past works, have you worked with any performers that have been involved in Star Wars? Because I saw that you did some work on Spitting Image early days.
First job was Spitting Image.
And Brian Herring, who operated BB-8 in The Force Awakens and the sequel trilogy, also worked on Spitting Image.
Brian would have worked in a studio. So we did the voices first at Molyneux, which is just off Carnaby Street. We did the scripted voices first, and then the scripted voices were taken over to studio, and then the puppeteers would sync the mouths with their hands. Yeah. We were one room and they were another, so I never went down. Yes, I've worked with Dennis Lawson. Dennis was in Cold Feet with me. I've met Kenny Baker on many occasions. I know his son, who is a stills photographer. And Kenny's son was doing stills on Silent Witness recently when I did that show. Oh, there must be more. Probably if I go on IMDb, you have worked with. Yes, Steve Spears. Because he does a brilliant story. He goes, he's a big Welshman, So Steve, he said, he went on stage and he had to introduce myself and say I was captain, so I fly this spaceship in the Phantom Menace. And then he handed the mic down to the basically ground level, and it was the guy went, "Hello, I'm the chap that works Jabba's tail." And it was
Mike Edmonds. Yeah.
Mike. It was Mike that, you know, I've got that famous making of
Yes.
it's action men inside Jabba, and
Yeah.
he's got a rotten job of working the handle when he's a bit excited. I'll give it a bit more. I love all that. And that's practical effects again, you know. Andor, Lee Boardman looks like me, and I look a bit like Lee. And Lee was in Andor, and Lee was in episode 1 of that. And people were contacting me, "Hey, great Andor." I was something. So to send him a picture of me. What I did was screenshotted a picture of me and me next to Lee, and then sent him, went Lee on the left, John on the right. And the guy went, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed. Sorry, I'm really embarrassed." He got a foot in the door, but I don't know anyone. Oh yes, of course I do very well. I know Keith De Winter. I did the worst panto I've ever done.
I was going to say he's a panto guy, isn't he?
Yeah. He did Damon it, and it was just hysterical how bad this panto was. So if anything could have gone wrong, I told someone the whole story once. They went, "That's an Edinburgh show." That shit. But Keith's great. He's done it. He's done really well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's Moonchester, isn't he? That's how he started as Man City's mascot. You know, because he's the size he is as well. Because it's a skill, you know. Yeah. When I did mask singing, you've got to realise that when you see playback, more is definitely more, because all these Disney characters, there's no facial expressions. You've got to give it some. So what Keith's done, he's prime for that. He's done very well out of it. Keith's probably done one of the best because he's in loads of different people, isn't he? And
he's, like you say, he's a nice guy, and he gets out there on the circuit and mixes it up with folks and has a good chat with folks.
Yeah. I watched L376 recently. That was a good
one.
Very interesting. I watched all those things. I watched the Dave Prowse one, which is quite sad, really. Personally, I had a lot of run-ins with the tabloids. It was nothing to do with him, was it? You know, that he wasn't invited to anything because they said he'd blown the gaff. I felt so sorry for him. It was the Mail, wasn't it? Daily Mail, really, that stitched him up. Darth Farmer. That's what they call him.
That's right.
Darth Farmer. And I love all those things about, like, Grand Moff Tarkin, Pete Cushing. The jackboots were agony. So only on a wide he's got them on.
Yeah.
But he had like carpet slippers on because he couldn't walk in them.
I've seen the slippers for real. Yeah, he had great big feet.
Those kind of little details, I adore. I adore those.
And there's not many films. I mean, there's legends behind every film and TV series, and there's always stories on any production of anything, isn't there? But Star Wars, it's iconic because Star Wars is iconic, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
But the only one that got the blessing really was Spaceballs.
Yes.
Lucas went to Mel Brooks,
but don't release any merchandise. That was the deal.
So they took the mickey out of it.
Yeah.
And they had their own merch in the film.
Oh, no, Mel Brooks wants to do a sequel now. He's talking about doing a sequel, and he says, well, George doesn't own the company anymore. Maybe I can make some toys this time.
Well, good luck with Disney.
So what's next for you, John? What's on your plate next?
Well, at the moment, I'm in work limbo at the moment, which is a weird place to be because my bread and butter is voiceovers. So it started as 8 on a Sunday night of bargain-loving Brits in the sun. And then there was a spare slot at 4 p.m. in the daytime slot that was free. So they said, well, let's repeat one of the old bargain Brits at 4 p.m. And it peaked the schedule because it's like kind of thing, you know, getting home from school and like, you know, kids waiting for the tea. It's one of those things like, you know, when you're in a hotel room and you're not really sure what to watch, you know.
Yeah.
It's not much choice. And if you put that on, you go, oh, hang on, this is quite nice. It's quite, you know, it's a warm show and it's funny.
Yeah.
So I do 136 of those.
Wow.
Because we do Monday to Friday. So it's on every day. So that's one. My other big one is Police Interceptors.
It's one of my wife's favourites. So
fantastic. Yes. Well, they're two of the big hitters on Channel 5. So I've got in 2 different slots. So they love me at Channel 5 because I do 2 very disparate shows, but lend my narrative voice over to. That keeps things going. Things take about a year before they come out. So I've been a little bit ubiquitous recently because I had a thriller on Channel 5 called Too Good to Be True. Then I was a policeman. I was as DCI Warren Bull in Silent Witness. And then along came The Gentleman. Now, I love doing that. Now, the problem for actors now is self-taping. And I went to a surprise birthday party for our old Cold Feet producer, Andy Harris, in London last week. And I saw Phil Glenister there. And he went, how are you getting on, Phil? I went, yeah. I went, how do you do with self-tapes? He went, John Sim calls them self-harms. The problem is because of the pandemic now, there was a time when you'd go into the room and you would meet a panel of people, producer, director. They get an idea of what you were like as a person. And also, they used to say, do you mind reading? And give it to you. Now, obviously, My gift is sight reading. So I'd be given the script and I'd just smash it. And that's how it used to be. I'd always get it. So The Gentleman was my first ever self-tape I've ever got with this agent, 45, right?
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. That's the hit ratio. So
that's a good number.
Yeah, I know. That's what it's like. So I read for Gospel John, the psychopathic Gouser.
Yeah.
And they said, well, you're not right for that, but we'd like to offer you Frank. And I went, oh, great. Guy didn't direct me. He did for 1 and 2, but Nima, he directed my episode. But I loved it because it's action. British action, something we've not seen for a very long time on television.
No.
And I just relished it. Little did I know, it came out. It was number 1 in 64 countries.
Yeah.
So hopefully you're only as good as your last performance. So we'll just wait and see, because it will help, definitely. I said I could be very useful to you. You know, I've got a lot of connections with my tabloid bribery. That's my character. So I'm turning the tables on them. I'm not resting. I'm always working on voiceovers. My passion is TV drama, really, or a film if I get one. Yeah. I've got a film to finish that was slightly stalled, but I can't tell you too much about that. But it's a Matthew Vaughan production.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
That's going to be amazing. So I've got a couple of days left on that. That's in the pipeline.
And now an episode of Making Tracks, so everything's rosy now, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, and let's hope we might get seen for a Star Wars, eh?
Wouldn't that be nice?
You'll be the first to know if I do.
Well, that's good. That's it. If it ever happens, we'll have to have you back on.
Keith de Winters to pull a few strings for me.
Visit fanthatracks.com or be sure to comment, like and share on our social media feeds at Fanthatracks. Send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Temple for composing the Fanthatracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch. And check out our Fanthatracks Radio Friday night rotation every Friday at 7 o'clock UK time for new episodes of The Phantom Down Under, Planet Layer, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks, and every Tuesday at 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks. And remember, fanthatracks.com, our social media feeds, Fanthatracks TV and Fanthatracks Radio are absolutely so no Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, Kickstarter or Indiegogo required to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
Coming up next on Fanthatracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.